Capturing wild bacteria and yeast for your ferments. In this video, I want to share a recent strategy I've been employing, and this came from, I've been doing this for a number of years, but the most recent example was I was out traveling to BC. Took the family, we took a little car road trip, visited friends, visited places. It was absolutely amazing and beautiful, and I was foraging along the way. And I did a video for the foraging forecast, specifically just kind of like highlight how I travel and forage at the same time, because I don't know about you, but I'm always looking, keeping my eyes if I'm driving, right? It's like checking out the forest, checking out the fields, you know, what's growing, what's in season, especially in new areas, new environments. I mean, living in Alberta, the opportunity to go to BC all the way to the coast brings a promise of such abundance and diversity. And, you know, provided, you know, you got the space, this and that, the time. I talked about, you know, different ways to kind of be able to harvest and then transport that back. And one method, so this was at end of August into September, and right then and then was blackberries, right, in abundance. Not something that's really going to last over a couple of week trip, so we ate our full. But I was also like so inspired to just pick buckets of the blackberries, and in doing so, I had my bucket of blackberries, but I was like, now what do I do, right? I mean, these things are gonna they're gonna go off, they're gonna turn to mush. And so what I did is I had some honey, and I poured honey enough over to cover the blackberries, and that initiated a fermentation. Now, it wasn't enough to preserve it, because there are methods where you can actually extract and preserve herbs, fresh herbs, in honey. But being the juiciness of the blackberries and that moisture content, it wasn't enough. So it did begin to ferment, but I know, having done this numerous times, like there's a ways you can actually ferment it safely, properly. And what I was going for was like a blackberry syrup of sorts, juice. So when I got home, actually on that trip, you know, of the couple weeks of having this blackberries in a bucket covered with honey, the top, I had it sealed up because I didn't want it spilling. The top would like swell in the bucket, and I'd have to kind of, you know, let off the gases, give it a swish, make sure all the berries were like uncovered with the, under the honey. And then when I got home, I strained it, and then I got this liquid. Now it was full to the top, and this is a mixture of honey and blackberry juice. And then I'd strained out all the fiber and all the seeds, which was still good, still delicious, very seedy. I've done it with other berries where I then turn that into a jam. Basically, I have this like fiber, pectin-rich, sweet fruit mash, right? Like Saskatoons works beautifully, or strawberries, you know, it's almost an instant jam in that regard. So I strained that, put it aside. With blackberries, it was very seedy, so that kind of mush, that mash, I ended up using it for something else. But what I want to highlight here today was this juice, this liquid, how I've been using it. I mean, it's a little bit too liquidy as a syrup, you know, like I can't necessarily just pour that onto pancakes. If I'd done different ratios and done it differently, or maybe I cooked it to reduce it, then it could be that way. But with this, knowing that it's like full of blackberry goodness, but most importantly, it's a live culture. And it was a combination of the honey and the blackberries coming together and fermenting. And it's the wild yeasts that are on fruits, the bacteria. It's ubiquitous on all of our fruits and vegetables, and we can learn how to utilize those things as starters for our ferment. So that's what I did. Knowing that it was very live, active culture, I'd kept it in the fridge just to kind of, you know, maintain that so it didn't continue to ferment. It wasn't going to explode this bottle. Keeping it in the fridge. Whoa, you can hear that, right? Even that little bit that's left, this is a very active live culture. And so what I've been doing is I've been using it to start my meads. Well, some meads, at least where the flavor is congruent. So this is a mead here that I started just a couple of days ago, and this is just one of many honey wines where oftentimes you might go and you buy a packet of fermentation yeast, champagne yeast. You can get different wine yeast, you know, you choose. You can activate them, start them, pour them in, get them going. All good. That's a great way to do it. Whereas this one here, I did a tea, I added my right proportions of honey, and then instead of pitching a store-bought yeast, I use this as my active starter because it's full of yeast that's already been feeding off of fruit sugars and honey. So adding it to this mead, which is actually, here it is. This is actually the blackberry. Remember how I mentioned I had all those like kind of fibers and the seeds left over? What I did was I simmered that down. Well, first I strained it even more to get all the flavor out, and then I simmered it with a bit of water and some cinnamon, and just to get the last little bit of extract out of those, that kind of blackberry pulp. And then, so I made basically essentially like a blackberry cinnamon tea, added my right proportion of honey, and then to start it, I poured in, I don't know, about that much. Kind of, you could do as much or as little as you want, quarter cup, half cup of that live culture starter. And by doing that, I'm adding that live yeast that's going to start. Now it has new food. Now it's going to continue fermenting all the sweetness from the blackberry and the honey that I added to this mead. And, main thing is I wanted to leave it open to the air. So I just put a little kind of a cloth covering it so it can breathe. This way, no fruit flies, most importantly, are going to get in there. And each day, I'm just kind of giving it a swish. And this is just a couple days as it's sitting open to the air to allow the bacteria and yeast from this to transfer into there, get established, and start the fermentation. Now, number one, it smells good, like a really great note of cinnamon. And unfortunately, you can't see it on this bottle. Sometimes I work with glass bottles that clear. This is, a brown glass. You can't quite see it. But what's happening now is very, very similar to this. You can see that kind of like frothiness, the head that's on top of that from the bubbles of activity of fermentation. I'm watching and waiting for that. And with open to the air, giving it a swish, I'm kind of feeding that yeast, getting that fermentation going, and I'm going to give it another day or two, and then once that is established, active by the indication of the bubbles and things on top, just like I see it here, then I'm going to put my airlock on, fill that up with water so it creates that air seal, and then this goes right ahead and continues to ferment under anaerobic conditions. Now, I talk all about this in the classes that I teach about fermentation, the difference between aerobic fermentations with oxygen versus anaerobic without oxygen. Now, being a mead, a honey wine, it's definitely anaerobic ferment, but there's benefits to that initial first couple of days being aerobic. Fermented foods like pickles and sauerkraut, that's absolutely an anaerobic ferment, of which I'll go more into that, as well as those particular ferments. Sure, this could work, but there's other ways that we can harvest wild bacteria from wherever it is, from the air, from vegetables, different places, to then add to and start our ferments. Let me know. Have you utilized this method? Have you utilized wild bacteria or yeast for your ferments? How about traveling, right? Any kind of techniques like this that you've utilized? And if not, or if so, you want to learn more, I've got 2 workshops coming up in October. October 20th is the Be Your Own Brewer, the Herbal honey wine. Learn how to create mead and all its variations using store-bought yeast or employing some of these kind of wild yeast methods. I've got lots that we'll have available for sample, get you into the art and craft of the home brew done well. And then the October 22nd is our fermentation course. Sauerkraut, pickles, hot sauce, mustard, all those kinds of condiments, bringing in these live bacteria into your everyday. Now, if you happen to watching these videos past those dates or you can't make it, next I'll offer them again sometime in the new year. I'm kind of doing some of my staple courses like chocolate, like elixirs, like fermentation, kind of once a quarter. So they're coming up end of October. You can go check out lightcellar.ca if you want to join me, learn more. You can be there in person. which is best because you get to like taste, you get to see, you get to smell. If you can only do it online, no problem. Online's great too, and everyone who registers will get the recording as well as kind of a recipe guide to get you started and on your way to the world of fermentation. So thanks for watching. Let me know questions, comments down below. Bye for now.